Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales, sponsored by Membrane. This season, we're diving deep into the 3 T's of developing scalable sales organizations: talent, transformation, and technology. We're bringing together sales leaders from around the world to help you elevate your organizations and crush B2B revenue goals. So smash that like button, subscribe, and ensure you don't miss an episode. Let's bring the heat. By that, I mean the Rev Heat. And by that, I mean Ken Lundin, founder and CEO of RevHeat. Ken has impacted billions in revenue over his sales career, spanning from a young salesperson to CRO to an entrepreneur, author, and thought leader. He's impacted thousands of lives in sales and understands how to drive strategic sales growth. Author of Strategic Selling Unleashed, Ken dives in with us today on how to craft sales organizations for exponential growth. We also have an amazing co-host, Zach Bauer, on it today. So let's bear down and get started with Ken Lundin and Zach Bauer. Welcome. So the question that started right before this episode was, what the heck am I getting into right now? So I am welcoming 2 people to answer that question for me, Ken Lundin and Zach Bauer. Ken from RevHeat, thanks so much for joining us. We're super pumped to have you on the show. Welcome.
I appreciate it. It's exciting to be here because, I'm just a fan of the show and I'm a fan of what y'all do. So let's get into it and let's blow some stuff up, as they say.
Exactly. If it's not controversial and fun, it's not controversial and fun. Zach Bauer, how the heck are you doing as well, my man?
Hey, thanks for having me. Kind of an impromptu little session here. Looking forward to it.
Let's go. I mean, this is the most highly planned and produced podcast in the history of the world, which is good because the quality never, ever, ever fades. I'm sure all my listeners would say that. So, Ken, number one, we're going to start with you. Hey, man, can you do me a favor and just dive in a little bit to your background in sales and what you're doing today with RevHeat?
Yeah, it's super simple. I'm a mutt. I'd be completely unemployable as of today because, right now what everybody wants is that person who's specialized in an industry for 5 to 487 years. Mm-hmm. So worked across them all. It's always been B2B. We have a sales methodology that's sold $1 billion for our clients over the last 8 years. So we're a process first, but then, personal responsibility all the way down to the seller. So ultimately, what I tell you is this: we've had some success, but it's because we've had great clients. And I've been selling, since the day out of college with that fantastic political science degree. So
I didn't know you got a political science degree. Let's dive deep. I was a communication major in political communication. I mean, man, that has driven us far, hasn't
it? Yeah, I used that degree for all of No, didn't use it.
Zach, you got to throw in, what was your major in college?
It was marketing, but mostly selling Harleys. That was really my focus in college. Like, I did the schoolwork, but I was living at a dealership at the time. So
that's awesome. That is awesome. Ken, do you ever ride Harley?
No, but I had a crotch rocket for 6 years as my primary form of transportation, an '89 Honda CBR 600 in Arizona, of all places. So,
oh yes, I didn't know the Arizona history too. When did you live in Arizona?
Oh gosh, for 20 plus years, so from '84 to 2006. I think that might also age me a little bit.
Phoenix or Tucson
Phoenix for most of it, Tucson for school. So I think we had part of this conversation once. So I'm a wildcat.
I forgot about that. I'm a wildcat as well. We completely forgot about that.
Well, at least we know that we've got 2 smart guys on here because we're both wildcats. It's the finest institution in the world.
Bear down.
Happy to bring it down a notch.
I think we should probably sing the fight song. Instead of singing the fight song, we're going to get into some of the questions around we have today. So, Ken, you've worked with a lot of different companies over the course of your career and also right now. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in sales today. What are some of the biggest issues facing us? Let's just dive on that.
Sure. I think you can't talk about today without going back just a few years, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we have to be aware of is the largest change in employer-employee relationships since the union was introduced. And that was this whole remote work and employees moving to the suburbs and deciding that their lifestyle was more important than being in a corporate culture. So problem that created was just 5 years ago. Can you remember when culture was the thing you put in your job ads?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have this greatest culture. We have ping pong tables and we have free draft beers on Fridays. And so you have those things that changed it. And what did that do? Well, put it in a completely remote work environment, even with the return to office in play. And so managing and leading teams has become substantially harder. And what we're seeing in that is the productivity of those teams have gone down. Paul, you presented at a conference we were at together, and it showed quota attainment has dropped by 20%. Now, less than half the sellers on the market are actually getting there from qualifying and finishing their quota. And then our research working with the Objective Management Group shows that less than 50% of sellers actually have the basic skills needed to be successful in sales. So as the larger environment, yeah, you might think I'm trying to bag on a seller, but no, what I'm talking about is what the created of the environment is for an actual company and a manager and a leader. If you've got all of those things stacked against you. And so that's what we're seeing right now is sort of a reassessment of what does it look like to have an effective sales team, an effective sales force.
So let's start diving on that all the way down. I break it up. I tend to break it up into three areas. One is talent. Who are the right people in the right seats? Do we have them? I lump a lot of things into this second T because I like the threes, but transformation, which talks about, what is the methodology? What is the process we're using? How are we coaching? How are we driving accountability? And then the third, so essentially transforming that talent, right? And the third is the technology that we need to be able to do that. And I have some pretty specific thoughts on the overexplosion of technology and the need to focus on it. So let's start at the number one, like the talent side. Tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you're facing in that new remote work environment in finding the right people, bringing the right people in and getting them in the right seats.
Sure. The talent component is a pretty big deal. And the reason it's such a big deal is everybody talks about it, but nobody knows how to identify it. So we say we want to bring in the best talent, but it's not like sports. They don't have a guy dribble a basketball and shoot. They don't have them do the NFL combine before they come into sales.
That would be awesome, by the way.
Yeah, I'm there.
Combine. Sales combine. Yeah.
Let's go. I'll go. How many times can I bench shoot 25? I'm in. Let's go. So, but when you look at talent, the talent problem is this compounding thing. And I think the overarching real issue beyond whether or not most people are able to identify skills, which you and I know that we have a way to do that, but really comes down to that there's a lack of respect. I was with a chief legal officer and a chief people officer yesterday for about a $200 million company. And I said, you have a fundamental problem because you've got an enterprise sales company selling complex services and your leadership doesn't actually respect that sales requires process and systems, not just getting lucky and throwing bodies at it. And so there's a real talent crisis, or maybe should I say a talent identification crisis that's occurring in the world of sales today.
How do you go in and change that systematically with some of these companies? Because for the most part, when I go in and I talk to companies, they recruit salespeople the same way they recruit everybody else. And there's no systematic process to it. There's no so what do you recommend? How do you operate on that?
Yeah, we have a very different system as I think you've probably seen. Because we know that hiring sellers is very, very different than hiring for any other position, right? They've got to be able to politically walk the line with their clients. They've also got to be able to sell jobs and sell stuff internally to their SMEs and their practice teams. And so we have a very specific way where we put the actual salesperson, sales manager, or leader at the forefront of what we're looking for. And that can be everything as tactical as how we write the very first paragraph of a job ad, to all the way through to what's the process. And you put them through a sales specific assessment, which measures the 21 core selling competencies. So we can weed out the 75% of people who probably won't be successful in our industry and our organization. And I can tell you from this perspective, and Zach, I would bet you have an opinion on this. Sellers want to be around other great sellers. If you breed a team of underperformers, you'll have trouble keeping the overperformers too.
I would agree with that fully, right? Like if I look back to my initial like taste of the sales environment, it was literally on a dealership floor where the scoreboard, if you will, the leaderboard is right there in the showroom, right? So you can see exactly where you rank. You can see how many, vehicles you have out the door, how many calls you've made, appointments, all those things right there front and center. And I do think that's an element that's in large part lost when you've got a dispersed team and you may not be, seeing things from the same perspective every day. Because right, like unless you've got your dashboard set as your home screen when you log into whatever system you're using, that's just kind of living in the background in a lot of ways. And I think there's some friendly competition that gets developed there, and it makes everybody better.
Well, let's call it what it is. That we're in an era that's the wussification of sales. I mean, think about it right now. You go to a sales manager or a leader and you say, hey, here's what you should do. Publish a daily report based upon the forward-looking metrics that matter the most to somebody's success in the next 60, 90, 120, or 180 days. And they're like, well, I don't want Johnny to see Jan's stuff. Well, then how are you're not actually managing on a daily basis either. So who's actually responsible? I mean, we've taken away the personal accountability. And I truly, truly believe between the wussification of sales and the Twitterization of sales, that's why teams are underperforming.
We'll talk about that Twitterization too, because that's something that's fascinating. I think I know what you mean, but I want to dive into that a little bit more with you.
Yeah, the Twitterization of sales is this. If you're a prospect or a client and you don't have an immediate need that I can see in my theoretical sales timeline, I push you to the side and I forget that you exist. Mm-hmm. And then the only way that you come back is if you happen to hit my timeline again. The relationship aspect of actually investing in the relationships and the people that are going to be the ones where you're going to help them solve problems is largely gone. And partly that's due to the way management these days is making fundamental mistakes about how they manage the success of a sales team. And I'll tell you this right now, if you're listening to this, I can tell you how you've got it. I can tell you how to identify if you have a problem. Do you get to the end of a quarter or a month and ask your sales team to get a discount in place to get a deal done? Mm-hmm. If so, you need to change your culture around your sellers because that's a problem. And it's showing that all they care about is the thing that we need to get done today for the month or the quarter. And it is jeopardizing your long-term viability of your sales success.
Well, that speaks to a lot of what Zach was talking to, and you were talking earlier about culture. How does, let's go back to that hiring aspect. And there's something I absolutely love in the OMG assessment. There's other assessments out there that measure this as well, but that idea of responsibility and accountability for your own actions and really that self-leadership. So one of the things I've noticed is that self-leadership over the past and I don't think this can be since 2020, I know self-leadership and accountability to oneself has gone down across the culture. It just has. It became very easy to say no, to push things out. It became very easy. Essentially, it's also the Netflixization of sales. I can get whenever I want it. But that's the opposite of what a good salesperson can bring, right? So how often are you finding people? I know I found one here in Zach that's amazing at it, but how often are you finding people that actually still have that responsibility, that outlook, that accountability? Or is it something you have to stress all the time when you're finding talent?
Wow, that's so much deeper than we have time for.
Sorry.
Because I'm a huge individual accountability guy. Mm-hmm. Right? Everything else that I can't actually influence is just noise. So I'll be really controversial here as an example.
Yeah.
Right? You got brothers and sisters not talking to each other, mothers and fathers. It's going to happen again this election season. It started in the 2016 election, but here's the gig. I can't change any of it, so it's just noise. I'm not going to get emotionally involved, and I'm not going to participate in that manner. But what I can say that about is I can say it to Zach and I can say it to myself. I can go, what comes into my circle? So I have this concept called the 3-foot rule. And if you put your hands out and you drop some strings down from the end of it and you do a turn and you get the circle around your body. And that's figuratively showing me that if it's not in a place that I can actually make an impact, then I don't worry about it. And how does that apply to the question you had about accountability? Well, that's the same thing that Zach would do. He may not have pictured it that way, but he's saying, what can I do in my circle to influence the outcomes that are going to happen for me? But here's the problem. The thing we don't talk about in lack of responsibility throughout organizations is that it's usually empowered by your leadership giving you the okay to make excuses. Oh, I didn't get my stuff entered in the CRM on Friday. That's okay. That's okay, Jim. I know that you were busy. Oh, I didn't quite get it, but I'll get it next week. Well, that's okay. And your leadership is probably also making similar excuses about their lack of performance, lack of coaching, and lack of participation with your sellers. So accountability is twofold. One, can you get people who fundamentally are people who believe that they want to be the independent voices and that they want to do the things they can control? Second component, though, is from a structural perspective, you can undo that if your sales managers don't require it.
So how do you, okay, let's keep diving, because this is really good. This is tied to both finding the right talent and then helping them transform. How do you hold, I mean, I have an answer to this, but how do you hold people accountable continually, right?
I'm going to throw a curveball at you, Paul, and I'm actually going to redirect.
I'm winding up.
I'm going to redirect a question to Zach.
Oh, dang, that is a curveball. No. I just struck out.
Everybody's teed up.
Throw the ball my way. You threw to first. Yeah. All right, get ready.
So, Zach, here's my question. We talk about accountability. Here's the one thing that we can probably say universally. No seller will generally admit that they like to be accountable to others. So that's the first thing, right? They don't want to enter in the CRM, and they don't want the man to have a look at their stuff. How do you implement the idea of accountability yourself, and what support do you look for from somebody like Paul?
Yeah, that's you're asking this question on the heels of our coaching session from yesterday, actually, and it's funny because we actually spent some time going through that, right? And I'll be the first to admit I'm not the best at inputting stuff in a CRM every time. Like anybody, I'll cut corners occasionally, and I think having someone who's not afraid to bring that out, right, and like highlight it and say, hey, look, you could do a little bit better here, is helpful, right? I really do my best to not push off blame onto somebody else, right? Like I want to take ownership and I want it to be my fault, right? Like what can I influence? What can I do next? What's the next best thing that I can do? And I think that's the best way to go about it. I don't know. I guess I don't really have like a really well thought out response to that question, but I agree that self-leadership and taking ownership of your own responsibilities is super important.
Well, and I'm going to add on to that, which is, and it's one of the reasons I love working with Zach, and it's a great question, Ken, right? I think it's a twofold answer. I think a coach has to be accountable to be having that uncomfortable conversation about things other than that are just right in front of them, right? Just right in front of you. Everybody has a dashboard, and why didn't you hit your numbers? Oh my God, it's the end of the month, right? And you didn't hit your numbers. Hey, we just talked about that. But every coach has to be accountable to having that tough conversation and not backing away from it. So a coach truly has to be accountable to that. I love the system that we've recently released called Elevate, which is just like, it's helping me do that so much better. But it's one of those things in a culture of accountability. It has to start with the leadership, and the leadership has to be culturally and empowered to ask those tough questions. And back to that wussification of sales, I think you are, what we've seen a lot over the past 5 years is the appeasement of the half good sale of the salesperson that's at the 60% level, instead of the empowerment with coaching of the salesperson that wants to be great. And I think those are two very separate things. I know they're two very separate things because I lived them. And they're one will kill an organization and one will absolutely set a foundation for flourishing and driving things forward.
And to that end, I'll challenge sales leaders. I'll challenge CEOs. Here's how you fix part of the problem. Are you spending most of your time with your C- performers?
Mm-hmm.
Are you trying to bring them up? And are you neglecting your A performers? Because the real way to run a successful sales organization that has accountability for behaviors and actions is to spend your time with your A players and pull everybody up rather than trying to sit with your C players and push them up. And that's what gets missed. Because your A players, truthfully, you leave them alone because they're providing air cover for you and the rest of your team. But your A players turning into an A plus player, those are the people who go from doing 10 million to 15 to 20. And we've seen it. Individual sellers carrying anywhere between 40 million and 400 million a year. Put them on the pedestal, show the rest of the team how that system works, spend your time with those people. That's how you actually change the culture into one of accountability.
What's interesting too is most often what happens is those are the salespeople that get promoted to the manager, but they're also some of the salespeople that don't ever want that. They're like, oh, okay, this must be the next step in my career, so I should be it. Yeah. They should be the salesperson that, Zach or Nick or Pam or Jen or somebody comes to and says, hey, how are you doing that? And they should be able to say, yeah, I'm doing this, and this, and come to me whenever you have any questions. But they're not the person that should be holding the other ones accountable. That's systematic. Like, tell me if you agree with it. I think that systematic discipline needs to be embedded in the culture of leadership. And
I think you can
I've
be
done
a leader
that really well sometimes and really poor sometimes, but I think it's critical.
I think you can be a leader without having the title. And I believe that's a necessary component of a really well-structured team, regardless of what professional discipline it's in.
Mm-hmm.
Because people look up to you. You're a subject matter expert. You're a salesperson. You're somebody in accounting. They look up to you and they're looking to see the behaviors that drive the things that you do. And I think that's the part that gets missed. And there's nothing I respect more than a seller who's crushing it, who says, nope, I don't want to go into management.
Mm-hmm.
I want to own myself. Because if I go into management, that's a whole new set of skill sets. And by the way, then I get my results through a bunch of other people. Have you seen what it's like to manage people? Like it's not fun most of the time.
Yeah. Yep. And so let's tie into, I'm going to switch modes for a while. So we dove in a big way into talent and a little bit of the transformation. I want to talk about a little bit of another segment that I have in this transformation area, which is, and I know you're a big believer in this, which is the methodology and process by which you empower salespeople to go to market. What are you seeing out there in terms of, I've heard everything, people say everything from, hey, sales methodology is dead, just let people freeform, AI is going to take it, to back to on the other side is you have to follow rigid every process, every step. What is your opinion on sales methodology and process, and how does that empower people?
It's the reason I have a relationship with Membrane. Because it's
all right.
In my world, sales methodology, I believe sales methodology and process is about 75% of the success of a sales team. The 25% is the individual seller's attributes on how they actually exercise the thing, how they have the conversation, do the talk, etc. So if that's the case, let's talk about AI. Everybody is ignoring a fundamental truth about the state of artificial intelligence in sales today. And the truth they're ignoring is this, is that AI, for the sake of AI, to replace and build process is about as effective. I don't know. I was going to make some really bad example of animals in sports, and I don't even know what it is because it's that bad. So here's the point. AI without the fundamental process that already works is not replacing anybody today.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, if you can take AI and then enhance it and lay it on top of processes and methodologies that are already at work and successful, now you're talking about it really supercharging your ability to do the things you do. But it's foundational to what we're talking about from sales process and methodology. They must be in place. And unfortunately, I find most companies don't have it in place at all. And I'd rather have a little of one than none.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world who had 600 B2B sellers in North America, and they had no defined sales process other than the one that came out of the box with Salesforce.
Oh, geez.
They didn't know their close rates, their win rates.
Yeah.
So sales
10%.
process and methodology are fundamentally important, and AI will only work on top of it.
So where does it start? For a seller today, and I know there's all sorts of different organizations out there that do things a ton of different ways, but I've been noticing the shrinking of the SDR role, the increasement of the full cycle AE. Where do you generally find that sales and relationship aspect, building process methodology starts and in? Is it all the way? Do you like the full cycle where somebody's rocking it and they're creating their own energy? Tell me a little bit more about that. Does that make sense? I think that might have been a shitty question.
Oh, Paul, we're so used to those from you. It's okay.
Oh, that's good. I'm just. I made a crappy question. I'm not supposed to swear.
That's all right. Well,
you're allowed to. I'm not supposed to.
I answer some bad ones too.
Poopy.
So, and I give bad answers. So here's what I would say. So first of all, if you'll listen to some of the quarterly investment calls from some of the largest companies in the world, software particularly, who have a per seat charge, you're starting to hear analysts ask them the question, like, what are you seeing and why aren't you seeing as many seats now that companies are getting comfortable with the new economic environment and hiring again?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that comes out from those calls is this. People and companies in this new interest rate environment and the other things that are happening in the macro level are looking for their teams to be more effective. They didn't know what was going to happen in the artificial technology bubble, right? Kind of post-ish COVID. So they hired 1 trillion people. They jacked up all the salaries and the wage rates by pushing everything up for like highly, experienced positions. And then they fired them all like 18 months later.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, everything that we're seeing says effective outweighs size. With that being said, why would that directly impact SDR versus full cycle sales? Because it's only gotten harder to be a hunter. And Zach, I'd love to hear your perspective on this because I know you're still hunting each day, but the connect rate on phone calls, the averages we see is 5 out of 100 calls. So that's changed substantially. So that's your first problem. Second is just in the last 6 or 8 months, Microsoft and Google have both made massive updates to try to reduce the amount of overall spam, because the truth is there's more spam today than there ever was. And that's because during COVID, everybody got lazy and that's all they thought they could push out. And now they just think, oh, we're going to do more instead of be effective. So I don't know, Zach, if you've seen it become more difficult, but all the data says, yeah, it's getting harder to get people to say yes to an appointment.
Yeah, I would agree with that in large part, but I also think a lot of it depends on the type of industry that one you're calling into and the type of solution that you're calling about. But that being said, I mean, I spent a lot of time like purely focused on fractional business development, right? So calling ag tech, logistics, manufacturing, HR, like a lot of different spaces. And I do think there has been, in general, a fundamental shift in the difficulty of getting people's attention. I think certain channels tend to work better than others, but that's also kind of my own perception because where I've focused my own personal skill set, right? Like the phone has always been the number one thing for me. Definitely more challenges in terms of getting good quality data out there, but I also think it's it has a lot to do with putting in the actual effort and the work too, right? Because it's so easy to say, oh, the connect rate is low on a phone, so I'm not going to call. I'm just going to send emails because it feels good, right? Because we can see all those little blips of, my email got opened, and that's a lot less invasive than, that somebody picking up the phone. So I think there are challenges, but in that, it also presents a really big opportunity for people that are skilled to stand out and actually, make those connections and push things forward. So,
yeah, they say that the buyer has ADD to some extent. Like if you've heard that as kind of the excuse now. And I read a really interesting book, and I cannot remember the name of it. So if the author listens to this podcast, ping me and I'll give you credit. But what they said,
I can guarantee they're listening. I mean, almost guarantee. I mean, this thing worldwide. Come on. You got this kind of like banter back and forth. Yeah. Reach out to Ken, please, author.
No, but what they said is this: your buyers don't have ADD. They've just been trained to make decisions about what interests them substantially faster. Think about the metrics on, say, TikTok as an example. In their metrics, if somebody stays on your video for 7 seconds, that's an eternity and means they're interested. Mm-hmm. Think about how you swipe through your social media on your phone. You can literally get it to where it's never stopping scrolling. It's always in constant movement until you decide to stop it. So I think that's the other part about what's happening today. And so I think you are going to see a movement to efficiency, effectiveness, full cycle AEs, people who can handle it the whole way. There's going to be a place, and there always will be, for sales reps who are good and great at what they do. That part of the sales population, don't worry at all. Do what you're doing. Keep kicking ass. But those of you who haven't met quota in a few years and you've only spent 11 months at each of the last 4 jobs, you may want to try to find another profession because technology is coming for you.
Yeah, I think that just is it's a trend. It's the double down on why the first part of this conversation, the talent, is so important, because I'm seeing a double down on the talent, but also the investment in that talent. So I think the days of, which is troubling to me, for the days of like recruiting good people into sales. Like I think we're going to have to solve that. And I actually think longer onboarding and training cycles are going to be more important to be more effective, rather than what I'm always hearing, which is I need to get a rep up to speed in three weeks. Give me a month. I think I believe there's going to be a shift in that. You need to have the process to be able to act on it, but to be able to take in all of the information that's available and then execute it on it in a way that actually brings value to somebody else that you're talking about. That is a much longer, we're seeing it's not a marketing thing. It's a personalization thing, rep to rep, person to person, human to human. And that's difficult. So that pipeline out of college, I actually am a little bit worried about how that's going to happen. And because the SDR it's becoming less and less prevalent.
Yeah, the people. So if we tie it all together, we get the people, transformation, and technology. Mm-hmm. That's why platforms like Membrane, as an example, are so critical. Because what you said could be interpreted as following: oh, I just need to give them more training. Mm-hmm. No, you need to have the right resource with the right training, with the right tactics in the exact stage of the sales cycle, yes, while they're getting ready for the meeting, in order to enable and empower them to be successful for you and with your clients. So when we talk about this process methodology stuff, you can get lost in our opportunity to close roadmap, which, by the way, kicks butt. You can get lost in that. You can talk medic. You can talk BANT. You can talk spin, which I wrote an article in 1992 that was published on spin. So it's been around for a second. You can look at any of these things. Here's what people get wrong all the time, though. They mistake sales process for sales methodology, or sales methodology for sales process, and they think they're equal. So let's clear it up right now. Sales process is the roadmap. It's the map on your phone. The methodology is whether or not you choose to walk, ride public transportation, or drive to it. And you have to be able to combine the methodology that makes sense in the part of the sales stage, in the buyer's journey where it's most appropriate. Otherwise, I promise you, you're going to continue to have 50 or 60 or 70% of your sales team miss quota because you've not put in the internal systems and processes to make them successful.
And that part of the program was brought to you by membrane.com. No, I absolutely. That's why I loved chatting with you, because we're so in line on that. I spent millions of dollars trying to build this in Salesforce at a previous business of mine. We did sales as a service for companies. And it was a being able to give somebody a roadmap, right? That includes how to operate and execute on the skills. So I say the skills, the conversations, and everything that you need to have within the context of the conversations that they need to be having, right? Yeah. To drive execution is just so critically important in growing people. And that's not training. That's not bringing you in for a 1-day training or a 2-day training. Say, here's how we're going to do it. I remember in 2004, I went through this training on shark charts. It's a shark chart, which I think they tried to do it off of Whale Hunter. I don't know. But it was, but it was a 2-day training. And what everybody did with that training was they threw it in the trash. It was terrible. So it was so cheesy. It was so bad. Everybody threw it in the trash and nobody followed it. So we got an uptick a little bit, but the combination of tying all those things together is critically important. And I'm stealing your wind right here, Ken. So what I'm going to do is, can you do me a favor? We're going to round this out now, but I would love it if you just kind of gave your overview of if somebody was take one thing away from this conversation and one thing away from our time together, what would be the most important thing that you would say to them and say, besides call Ken, which is everybody call Ken. He's a lot of fun and good to hang out. But what would be the one thing about the state of sales today that you would really, really, really want to highlight and urge people to tackle?
It's a fantastic question. I think I'd sum it up in probably 3 points. One is talent is going to continue to be harder and harder to find. And that has to be a primary strategic initiative within the company for all positions, including sales. Second component, you really need to help and enable sellers to become individually accountable. The third point, though, is you really need to help sellers become individually accountable. That's the processes and the systems. And so when we talk about accountability, remember this component right here. You have an accountability to those who work for you to have the systems and process in place that enable them to be successful. And don't think just because someone told you 30 years ago that sales was an art, that they're right. Because that's somebody who was a little lazy, looking for entrepreneurial people so they didn't have to build the systems and processes. Talent's going to be hard. Individual accountability with corporate accountability is how you round everything together and have a scalable sales team.
That's fantastic. Ken, how do people reach you if they want to get in touch?
Awesome. So probably 2 primary ways. Go to revheat.com, click the button. You can schedule a call. Second, check out LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn, Ken Lundin. We put out a ton of content every single day. On top of that, we have a newsletter called Driving Traction. And I'll do one better for this audience. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. Tell me that you heard me here with Paul and Zach. I'll give you a free hour consultation. Just let's have a conversation about what's going on in your business. And I'll do that for you because you spend the time and you obviously want to get better with what's going on in your world.
Awesome. And thank you for that offer to the audience. Audience, I'd highly recommend you take him up on this. Ken is one of a kind. He's fantastic at the work he does, and he has achieved billions in revenue for companies that he's worked with. So highly recommend connecting with him. And plus, you'll have a boatload of fun doing it. And he'll hold you accountable to some things in that conversation. So with that being said, we are going to close out the episode of The Art and Science of Complex Sales. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on. Make sure you're clicking the like button, share this thing, get it out to anybody that wants to listen to Zach, Ken, and I, which I would just assume is everybody. But just get it out there, share it, like it. Thank you so much for listening, and keep shining bright, everybody. Have an absolutely amazing day. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Art and Science of Complex Sales. Please take a moment, like, subscribe, share this podcast on all your favorite platforms, and let's get the word out. This podcast is proud to be brought to you by Membrane.com. We are the world's top B2B sales platform. And in the world of B2B sales, with everything from prospecting to business acquisition to managing complex growth, Membrane has the right size technology for your sales team. Our latest innovation, the Coaching Cockpit, empowers your leaders, managers, and team with the information and tools they need to take their skills to the next level and to take advantage of the exponential power of effective sales coaching. With our technology and the top team of sales partners around the world, Membrane is helping to achieve our driving vision. This is, quite simply, elevating the sales profession. To learn more, find us at www.membrane.com. That is membrain.com, or contact us via email at sales@membrane.com. Keep shining bright and have a wonderful day.